Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a time and place where your social status, your future, and your very life could be ruined by something as trivial as a smudge of ink and a poorly made piece of headwear. Imagine standing in a public square, not for a festival, but as the main unwilling attraction. Unwilling. Your crime? Making a typo? And your punishment? A tall, conical paper hat marking you for everyone to see as a failure, a fool, an outcast. You probably wouldn't survive this, not really. The shame alone was a sentence of its own. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see where these stories land. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning air in Hanyang is cool, carrying the familiar sense of pine smoke from kitchen fires and the damp, earthy smell rising from the packed dirt lanes. It's early, but the city is already a low thrum of activity. You can hear the distant, rhythmic pounding of silk being washed by the stream, and the creak of cartwheels beginning their daily rounds. For you, however, these sounds are muted, filtered through a haze of nervous energy and sleeplessness. Today is the culmination of more than a decade of your life. It's the day of the Guagyo, the civil service examination. Pass this, and your future is a sunlit path of prestige, influence, and honor for your family. Fail, and that path crumbles into a ditch. The pressure is immense, like a physical weight on your shoulders, far heavier than the simple scholar's robes you wear. It makes your modern final exams feel like a casual pop quiz, given the stakes are just a bit higher, like your entire family's honor for the next 3 generations higher. You join the river of other scholars, all dressed in similar attire, a sea of anxious faces moving toward the examination grounds at the Sungkyunkwan, the Royal Academy. You clutch a small, smooth stone in your sleeve, a keepsake from your father, rubbing it with a thumb that is already slick with sweat. Superstitions are for the uneducated. You've always been taught, but today you'll take any advantage you can get. The grounds are a vast, open space, already filled with hundreds of identical small desks arranged in impossibly neat rows. Proctors, stern-faced men with the posture of retired generals, patrol the aisles. Their gaze is unblinking, their presence a constant reminder of the solemnity of the occasion. One of them looks like he's powered entirely by ginseng and disappointment. You find your assigned spot, unrolling your small bamboo mat and setting out your tools with practiced care. The inkstone, the water dropper, the ink stick, your brushes, and the precious roll of pristine white paper. For hours you do nothing but wait, breathing in the scent of ink and anticipation, the air thick with the silent prayers of 1,000 ambitious minds. Then, the topics are unfurled. Your heart leaps. It's a question of Confucian ethics you know well. A classic dilemma about the duties of a son versus the duties of a subject. The brush feels like an extension of your arm as you begin to write. The characters flow onto the page, black and elegant. Your arguments are sound, your calligraphy is steady. This is it. You can feel success within your grasp. You're deep in the flow of your composition, crafting a particularly nuanced point about filial piety, when a fly, a common, fat, buzzing fly, decides to investigate the sweet, earthy scent of your ink block. You twitch, a barely perceptible flick of your hand to wave it away. But it's enough. Your concentration breaks for a fraction of a second. In that infinitesimal moment, a single fat drop of black ink detaches from the tip of your brush. It hangs in the air for what feels like an eternity before landing with a soft final splat, right in the middle of a clean, unwritten line on your answer sheet. Panic, cold and absolute, seizes you. It's a perfect circle of black on a field of white, a tiny, glaring monument to your failure. It's not just a mistake, it's an imperfection. In the rigid, Neo-Confucian world of Joseon Korea, perfection in ritual and form is paramount. A marred paper suggests a marred mind, a spirit unfit to serve the king with the purity and focus required. You glance up and a proctor is already staring at you. He doesn't move, but his eyes narrow and you know you've been seen. Your mind races. Maybe you can explain. It was just a fly, an accident. But you know it's useless. The rules are absolute. Historians still argue whether the extreme rigidity of the exam protocols was a deliberate method of psychological filtering to find the most unflappable candidates, or simply a byproduct of an obsession with ritual purity that permeated every level of the state. Whatever the reason, the outcome for you is the same. The proctor glides over, his silence more damning than any shout. He simply points at the black spot. He doesn't need to say a word. He rolls up your paper, the crisp sound echoing in the dead silence of your immediate area. He beckons to 2 guards standing at the edge of the examination field. You feel 100 pairs of eyes on you, a mixture of pity, scorn, and, worst of all, relief that it wasn't them. Your career path, the one you've dedicated your entire existence to, has just evaporated. You almost laugh at the absurdity. Maybe basket weaving is hiring. But the cold expressions on the faces of the approaching guards tell you this is far more serious than simple disqualification. You're being escorted away not as a failed candidate, but as something else entirely. The whispers begin to follow you as you're led from the field. A low hiss that will soon become a roar. The short walk from the examination field feels like a league. The guards' hands on your arms are firm but not yet rough, guiding you away from the life you knew and toward something terrifyingly uncertain. They lead you into a side building, a place of administration you've never seen before. The air inside is still and heavy, smelling of old paper, beeswax, and the faint, bitter scent of medicinal herbs. You are left in a small, bare room. There is no furniture, save for a single woven mat on the wooden floor. Light filters in through a paper-screened window, casting a soft, hazy glow that does little to comfort you. The whispers from the field are gone, replaced by a silence that is somehow much louder. You sit, folding your legs beneath you as you've been taught, trying to compose yourself, to prepare a rational explanation. It was a fly, an accident, a moment of clumsiness. Surely reason will prevail. After what feels like an hour, an official enters. He is older, with a thin, wispy beard and eyes that seem to hold a permanent look of disapproval. He is not a proctor, but someone of higher rank, a functionary from the Ministry of Rights, perhaps. He doesn't look at you. He simply walks to the center of the room, unrolls your examination paper and spreads it on the floor. He stares down at the ink blot, his head cocked to one side as if examining a strange insect. You open your mouth to speak, to offer your meticulously rehearsed apology, but he raises a single bony finger. Silence. He finally speaks, his voice a dry rustle. An interesting choice, he says, his gaze still fixed on the paper. To place your mark of disdain here, of all places. You have no idea what he's talking about. You follow his gaze and your blood runs cold. The ink drop, your tiny circular mark of shame, has landed just below the character for loyalty, Zhang Chung. It sits there, dark and absolute, looking less like an accident and more like a deliberate, defiant full stop. A tear shed for a concept you supposedly mock. Tears like they rerunning your exam essay through some sort of 15th century conspiracy theory generator, and the output is not looking good for you. Suddenly the charge is no longer incompetence. The narrative is shifting with dizzying speed. This man, and the system he represents, is not interested in flies or accidents. He's interested in intent. This is where you learn a brutal lesson about Joseon society. It is a kingdom built on scholarship and philosophy, but it's run on raw, unforgiving politics. The court is famously riven by factionalism, the endless struggle for power between competing scholarly and political cliques known as the Bungdang. Your family, while respectable, belongs to a less influential faction, one that has been on the losing end of several recent debates at court. Your mistake hasn't just happened in a vacuum, it has landed in a tinderbox of political rivalries, and this official is holding a lit match. He begins to read your essay aloud, but his tone is all wrong. He infuses your carefully chosen words with sarcasm and hidden meaning. A passage praising the king's wisdom is read as a backhanded critique of his recent edicts. A quote from Mencius on the right of the people to overthrow a tyrant, a standard philosophical inclusion, is delivered as if it were your own seditious manifesto. You try to protest, to explain the context, but you are cut off. Your arguments are clever, the official says, a thin smile playing on his lips. You veil your treason in the words of the sages. He then kneels, peering at your face, making you deeply uncomfortable. He notes the high arch of your eyebrows, the slight downturn of your mouth. He is practicing a form of physiognomy or guansang, the popular belief that a person's character and destiny are written on their face. Arrogance in the brow, he muses aloud, and deceit in the eyes, the face of a plotter. So, there you have it. Your earlobes are apparently plotting to overthrow the government. Who knew they were so ambitious? Historians still argue whether these hyper-literal interpretations of textual flaws and physical features were genuine expressions of a belief in cosmic correspondence, where a slip of the brush truly reflected a flaw in the soul, or simply sophisticated cynical tools for political purges. For you, in this silent, sun-dusted room, the distinction is meaningless. Your reality is that a fly, a drop of ink, and your family's political affiliation have conspired to rewrite your identity. You are no longer a scholar. You are a traitor. The official rolls up the scroll, the final sound of your old life being put away. Your denial is spirited, he says, standing up. It is exactly the response one would expect from a cunning dissident. Ah, the classic "I'm not a traitor," which is exactly what a traitor would say argument. Foolproof logic, really. He leaves without another word. The guards return, and this time their grip is hard, their movements efficient and devoid of any courtesy. They pull you to your feet. The shock that had numbed you is beginning to fade, replaced by a wave of cold, terrifying clarity. This is real. This is happening. You won't be going home tonight to receive disappointed but loving condolences from your family. You won't be waking up tomorrow to resume your studies. You are being moved again, not to the exit, but deeper into the warren of state buildings toward the low, foreboding architecture of the state judiciary. The day that began with the highest of hopes is ending with you being formally charged with sedition, a crime whose punishment is far, far worse than simply failing an exam. You are guided through a series of covered walkways that snake around manicured courtyards. Every clerk or minor official you pass pointedly avoids your gaze, their hurried steps and averted eyes a clear sign that you are already contaminated, a social leper. The air of the judiciary precinct feels different, colder, heavier, stripped of the scholarly ambition that filled the grounds of the academy. This is a place of consequences. You are finally led into a hall, a Donghyun, the magistrate's main office. It's a spacious, imposing room with a high ceiling supported by thick wooden pillars painted in faded red. The floor is dark, polished wood, cool beneath your thin slippers. At the far end of the room on a raised dais sits the magistrate. He is a man in his late 50s, solidly built, with a face that seems carved from granite. He has the warm, approachable demeanor of a tax audit. Behind him, a large painted screen, a byongpung, depicts a roaring tiger in a bamboo forest, a traditional symbol of the magistrate's authority and power to ward off evil. In this context, it feels less like a symbol and more like a direct threat. This man is the tiger, and you are the unfortunate creature that has wandered into his territory. He doesn't look at you yet. He's examining a scroll, his focus absolute. The only sounds are the rustling of his silk robes and the soft scratching of a clerk's brush in the corner. The official from your interrogation steps forward and bows deeply. He presents your examination paper to the magistrate, which now feels less like a scholarly essay and more like your own death warrant. He launches into a formal, highly theatrical reading of the charges, his voice resonating in the quiet hall. He recounts the story of the ink blot, not as a clumsy accident but as a cunningly placed symbol of sedition. He reads your words back with that same venomous twist, making you sound like a monster of ingratitude and treachery. The whole performance is for the magistrate, the tiger on the dais, whose expression remains utterly unreadable. He asks, listening to this tale of your supposed high treason with the same placid intensity he might give to a slightly boring weather report. When the official finishes, there is a long, heavy silence. The magistrate carefully rolls up the accuser's scroll and then, for the first time, lifts his head and fixes his eyes on you. It is the tiger's gaze from the screen behind him, impersonal, assessing, and utterly devoid of mercy. This is the man who holds your life in his hands. Under the comprehensive legal code of the Joseon dynasty, the Gyeongguk Daejeon, a magistrate wielded enormous power. While the code laid out laws for everything from taxation to inheritance, its application, especially in politically sensitive cases like alleged treason, was heavily reliant on the judgment of the man in charge. Your fate depends entirely on how he interprets your story. Do you have anything to say in your defense? His voice is low and gravelly, a sound that seems to emanate from the floor itself. This is your chance. You take a breath, trying to steady your trembling knees. You tell your story. The truth. You speak of the stuffy air, the long wait, the buzzing fly, the involuntary twitch of your hand. As the words leave your mouth, you can hear how pathetic they sound. In this grand hall, with its symbols of state power and its atmosphere of lethal seriousness, your story of a fly is comically inadequate. You are trying to explain a moment of slapstick comedy in the middle of a serious historical drama, and the audience is clearly not amused. The magistrate listens patiently, his hands resting on his desk. Near his right hand, you notice a small, ominous bundle of red and black lacquered rods, the sanyak. These were instruments of calculation, used by magistrates to tally figures, but they were also used to indicate the number of blows a criminal was to receive during a flogging. Their mere presence is a form of psychological pressure, a constant, silent reminder of the pain that the state can inflict. As you finish your desperate, rambling explanation, the magistrate's expression hasn't changed one bit. He simply stares at you, his gaze boring into your very soul. Historians still argue whether magistrates in such politically charged cases had any real judicial autonomy, or if they were merely enacting foregone conclusions dictated by powerful factions in the capital. Looking into this man's cold eyes, you suspect your fate was sealed long before you entered this room. He lets the silence hang in the air for a full minute, a deliberate act of theater to impress upon you your own powerlessness. You are nothing, a speck of dust. Your ambitions, your years of study, your family's hopes, they are all meaningless before the monolithic power of the state he embodies. He has heard the accusation. He has heard your defense. Now, he will pass judgment. He picks up a brush, dips it in ink, and prepares to write his verdict. The scratching of the clerk's pen stops. The whole room holds its breath. The tiger has finished watching his prey. Now he will act. He looks up from his paper straight at you and opens his mouth to pronounce the sentence that will define the rest of your life. The magistrate's words fall into the silent room like stones into a deep well. He doesn't shout. He doesn't condemn you with fiery rhetoric. He speaks in a monotone, as if reading a list of household supplies. The charge of sedition, he says, his eyes holding yours, is a grave one, relying on the interpretation of a single mark. While this court finds your sloppiness and lack of mental fortitude to be an insult to the solemnity of the state examinations, the evidence for intentional treason is inconclusive. A breath you didn't even know you were holding escapes your lungs in a silent rush. You're not going to die. For a split second you feel a wave of dizzying, idiotic gratitude. Not being immediately killed is suddenly your new standard for a pretty good day. But the magistrate is not finished. The tiger does not let his prey go so easily. However, he continues, the word hanging in the air, the disruption of order and the disrespect shown cannot be ignored. Such weakness of character cannot be tolerated in a candidate for public office. He picks up his brush and makes a swift, decisive stroke on the document before him. Your name is to be struck from the official registry of Yuhak, he declares, the list of certified Confucian scholars. You are forbidden from ever taking the examinations again. The relief you felt moments ago curdles into ice in your stomach. It's a death of a different kind. Your identity, the very core of who you are and everything you have ever worked for, has just been erased with a flick of his wrist. They're basically unfriending you from the entire Joseon intellectual community. Your invitation to the annual Brooding Poets Symposium is now officially revoked. Your punishment will serve as a lesson to others of your undisciplined ilk, he says, looking past you now as if you've already ceased to be a person of any consequence. You will be subjected to the lesser penalties of the state. He is referring to the Joseon penal system, the Oyong, the 5 pillars of justice. You have dodged death, but you are about to become intimately familiar with the others. You are sentenced to the maximum term of dohyong, penal servitude, at a government worksite. This will be served in a place of yuhyong, exile, on the remote island of Jeju. Exile. The word itself sounds like the end of the world. But he's still not done. There's one more component. The preface to your long journey into obscurity. Before your exile begins, you will be made an example of in the capital. You will be paraded through the city so that all may see the consequences of scholarly arrogance. For this, you will wear the livery of the condemned, a wooden kangway to weigh you down, and on your head a jury, the conical hat of the sinner, a paper hat. The irony is so thick you could choke on it. The very material you are accused of defiling will now be used to defile you. Great. So the plan is to fight disrespect for paper with more paper. It's a bold strategy, you have to give them that. The magistrate's sentence is a masterpiece of psychological cruelty, designed not just to inflict pain, but to systematically dismantle your social standing and your sense of self. Historians still argue whether the emphasis on public humiliation in the Joseon justice system was a practical deterrent for a society without a large, centralized police force, or if it stemmed from a deeper Confucian belief that social harmony depended on individuals internalizing a profound sense of shame. As you stand there, numb and trembling, you realize it's probably both. It is intensely practical and philosophically devastating. The magistrate takes a small, intricately carved wooden tablet from his desk, a pane, the seal of his authority. With a sharp crack, he snaps it in two. He keeps one half for his records and hands the other to the head guard. It is the final, irrevocable authorization. The deed is done. He has already turned his attention back to the scrolls on his desk. Your case is closed. Your life is ruined. He is already moving on to the next matter of state. The guards haul you to your feet, their movements rough and impersonal. You are no longer a scholar who made a mistake. You are a convicted criminal, a package of flesh and shame to be processed. As they drag you from the hall, the magistrate's final words echo in your mind. Not the sentence of exile or servitude, but the mention of the hat. A simple thing made of paper and paste. Yet, in that moment, it feels like the heaviest part of the sentence. A weight that has already begun to settle over your life. Long before it ever touches your head, you are led from the magistrate's court, not back into the open air, but down a series of stone steps into the subterranean levels of the government complex. The air grows cold and damp, thick with the smell of mildew, stale rice, and human despair. This is the city prison, the Jeonokseyo. The guards shove you into a small dark cell, the heavy wooden door slamming shut with a sound of absolute finality. A tiny barred window high up on one wall lets in a sliver of gray light, just enough to make out the damp stone walls and the dirt floor. You're left alone in the crushing silence, the magistrate's sentence echoing in your mind. Exile. Servitude. The hat. You sink to the floor. The rough fabric of your scholar's robes, once a source of pride, now feeling like a costume from a life that belongs to someone else. After an indeterminate time, the door groans open again. You expect a guard with a bowl of thin gruel, but instead, an old man shuffles in. He's a prisoner, you think, judging by his ragged clothes and gaunt face. But he moves with a strange sense of purpose. He carries a small wooden bucket containing sheets of coarse yellowish paper, a pot of what looks like white paste, and a simple conical wooden form. He sets his tools down without a word and looks at you with weary, indifferent eyes. You were expecting a warden, maybe a formal interrogation. You weren't expecting to be greeted by the prison's official arts and crafts coordinator. The old man is the one who will construct your jury. He begins his work with the slow, deliberate movements of someone who has performed this task countless times. He dips a sheet of paper into the bucket, not of water but of thin, watery rice glue, the pulp. He then expertly drapes the wet, sticky sheet over the conical mold, smoothing out the wrinkles with his gnarled fingers. He adds another layer and then another, the cone slowly taking shape, growing thicker and more solid. The paper he's using is hanji, traditional Korean paper made from the bark of the mulberry tree. It's famous for its texture and beauty, but also for its legendary durability. A well-made sheet of Hanji can last 1,000 years. It's a chilling thought. Your hat of shame is being crafted from archival-grade materials. That's thoughtful. You appreciate the craftsmanship, even if the occasion leaves something to be desired. As he works, the old man begins to speak, his voice a low, raspy whisper, as if he's sharing a secret. "You must understand the hat," he says, not looking at you, "so you understand the punishment." He explains that every part of it has a meaning. The conical shape, he tells you, points upward. It is a constant silent accusation to the heavens, ensuring that your crime is known not only to man, but to the spirits and the gods themselves. As if a city full of angry neighbors wasn't enough, you think. Now the entire cosmos has to get involved in my bad day. He adds that the paper is often made from recycled official documents, sometimes even failed examination papers like your own, a symbolic reminder that your own knowledge and ambition have been pulped and reshaped into the instrument of your disgrace. Historians still argue whether the specific design elements of punishment tools like the jury were codified with a complex, state-approved symbolic language, or if they evolved more organically from local customs and prison traditions passed down by men just like this one. The old craftsman adds a grim little tidbit that you are certain is not in any official manual. He gestures to a small pot of black ink. "For the character," he says. "The character Joe, meaning crime or sin, will be painted on the front." He leans in closer, his voice dropping even lower. "They say that for the worst offenders, a pinch of bone ash from the crematorium is mixed into the ink. Binds the shame to the soul, they say." He gives you a sideways glance, and you can tell if he's telling the truth or just enjoying your horrified expression. Finally, the hat is complete. It is a tall, stiff, yellowish-white cone. It is absurd and yet deeply menacing. The old man takes a brush, dips it in the pot of black ink, which you pray is ash-free, and with a few deft strokes, paints the damning character on the front. He then carefully lifts the damp, heavy cone off its wooden mold and places it on the dirt floor in the center of the cell. It stands there, a perfect, simple shape that has just become the center of your universe. It is the physical manifestation of your sentence, the embodiment of your social death. You are no longer the promising scholar, the dutiful son. You are now just the man who is destined to wear that hat. You stare at it, this simple object of paper and paste, as it slowly hardens in the cold, damp air of your cell. Morning comes. There is no gentle dawn in your cell, only a slow strengthening of the gray light from the high window. The jury sits where the old man left it, a silent, pale cone in the gloom. It is now completely dry, hard as wood. The guards arrive, their faces impassive. One of them holds the hat. There is no ceremony. He simply steps forward and places it firmly on your head. The rim is rough, scratching your forehead. It's surprisingly heavy, and its height makes you feel clumsy and unbalanced. It's a one-size-fits-all and fits no one well kind of situation. The main function seems to be maximizing awkwardness and misery. The cone rises up, completely blocking your peripheral vision, forcing you to stare straight ahead. Your world has become a narrow, forward-facing tunnel. They bind your hands in front of you with coarse rope and lead you out of the cell, up the stone steps, and back into the world. The sudden explosion of morning light is blinding. The air, which you'd craved in the musty darkness, now feels thin and sharp in your lungs. The sounds of Hanyang, the chatter of vendors, the rumble of cartwheels, the laughter and shouts of a living city, rush in, overwhelming you. This is the stage for your humiliation, and the performance is about to begin. A guard with a small flat gong takes his place at the front of your tiny procession. Another unrolls a scroll. You begin to walk, your steps shuffling and uncertain. And then you realize the profound cruelty of the magistrate's plan. They are not taking you along the city's main avenues, the wide roads where you might be just another anonymous spectacle. They turn down a familiar lane, and a cold dread, deeper than any you've felt so far, settles in your stomach. They are marching you through your own neighborhood. This is the world you were born into. Hanyang, like other major cities of the time, was organized into districts or bang, which were further divided into smaller communities. Your life was lived within these few blocks. The people here are not strangers. They are your social universe. The guard at the front strikes the gong. The sharp, metallic clang cuts through the morning chatter. Heads turn. People stop what they're doing. The second guard begins to announce your crime in a loud, clear voice. Behold the scholar. He begins, naming you, naming your father, condemned for his arrogance and disrespect. His words a stain on the page, his character a stain on this community. He is reading out the story of your ink blot with all the dramatic flair of a theater announcer. You half expect him to start selling tickets. You keep your eyes fixed on the dirt path in front of you, but you can't shut out the sights. There is the old willow tree you climbed as a boy. There is the noodle seller whose stall you visited 100 times. There is the stone wall of your neighbor's house, every crack and patch of moss as familiar as your own hand. And from the doorways and windows faces begin to appear. First curious, then shocked as they recognize you, whispers ripple through the gathering crowd, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Small children, drawn by the gong, point at your strange hat. A few of them, not understanding the venom of the situation, even laugh and start to run towards you before being snatched back by horrified parents. Historians still argue whether the primary audience for these shame parades was the criminal himself, intended to break his spirit and force repentance, or the public, intended as a powerful tool of social control through vicarious experience. As you trudge through the heart of your own world, a walking monument to failure, you feel certain it was designed to do both, and is succeeding spectacularly. This is beyond anything you could have imagined. You were worried about the awkwardness of bumping into people you know. Now you see that was the entire point of the exercise. It's like a twisted surprise party, where the surprise is your family's complete and utter social ruin. The procession moves at a torturously slow pace. Every step is a fresh wave of shame. You are forced to look at the faces of people who have known you your whole life. The elders who once praised your scholarly potential, the friends you shared wine with, the merchants who always greeted you with a respectful bow. Now their faces show a mixture of pity, contempt, and fear. You are a contamination they are afraid to touch. The gong continues its brutal rhythm. The announcer continues his proclamation. And then, you see it at the end of the lane. The familiar tiled roof, the dark wood of the gate. Your home. The guards slow your pace even further, drawing out the final steps. The crowd behind you falls silent, sensing the climax of this cruel theater. The guard strikes the gong one last time, a final reverberating clang, and then stops you. Right in front of your own door, you stand before the gate of your home, a prisoner on display. The silence of the crowd is a physical presence, a heavy blanket of anticipation. Every eye is on the unmoving wooden door, waiting. Then, a bolt is drawn. A sound you've heard 1,000 times. A sound that always meant safety and belonging. The gate creaks open just enough for a single figure to emerge. It is your father. He looks ancient, as though he has aged a decade in the single day since you last saw him. He is dressed in formal robes, a sign that this is an official appearance, not a personal one. His face is a gray, stony mask. He does not look at you. His eyes are fixed on the guard holding the scroll, acknowledging only the representative of the state. He's looking in your direction, but not at you, with the expression of a man who has just discovered a very expensive and beloved family heirloom is, in fact, a worthless forgery. The disappointment is overwhelming. You want to cry out, to explain, to beg for a word of comfort, but the shame holds your tongue in a vice. The guard reads the charges one last time, his voice unnaturally loud in the quiet street. Your father listens, his posture rigid, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. When the guard is finished, your father gives a short, stiff bow. Not to you, to the guard. An acceptance of the state's verdict. He doesn't say a word. He doesn't have to. His silence is the cruelest sound you have ever heard. It is a formal, public disavowal. You are no longer his son. This is the brutal reality of familial responsibility in Joseon society. The legal principle of Yonjwaje, or collective punishment, meant that the crimes of an individual could bring ruin upon their entire clan. But even without a formal charge against them, the social stain, the damage to the family's face or camion was catastrophic. Your father's cold performance is a desperate act of damage control, a public surgery, to excise you the cancerous limb in the faint hope of saving the rest of the family from the disgrace you've brought upon them. From behind the gate, hidden from view, you hear a single, choked sob. Your mother. The sound is cut off almost immediately, muffled by a hand or a sleeve, but you heard it. It is a tiny crack in the perfect cold facade of your family's ruin. The crowd takes its cue from your father. With his silent condemnation, they are given permission to unleash their own judgment. The whispers erupt into a low murmur. It's like the entire neighborhood is live tweeting your disgrace, and the comments are decidedly not in your favor. You can pick out phrases from the noise. "Such a promising boy," says one of the elders, her voice thick with disapproval. "Brought shame on a good name," a merchant mutters to his friend. "I always said he had arrogant eyes," someone else comments. "A retroactive diagnosis of your character flaws." An old woman whose gate you are now passing quickly steps out with a small bowl and throws a pinch of salt onto the ground in your path. A common folk ritual to purify the space and ward off the evil you now embody. Great. Now you're not just a disgrace. You're also a bad omen and possibly a slug. The multifaceted nature of this punishment is truly something to behold. The sounds of judgment swirl around you, a vortex of whispers, tuts, and muttering. It is a punishment far more intimate and painful than a beating. A flogging would be over in minutes. The pain would fade. This is 1,000 tiny cuts to your soul, delivered by the voices of people you've known your entire life. Historians still argue whether the concept of camion was a rigid, top-down imposition of Confucian state ideals, or a more fluid, negotiated social currency that families could actively manage. In this moment, you understand with perfect clarity that your family's account is now bankrupt, and this is the sound of all their creditors coming to collect. The guards seem satisfied. The theater has achieved its desired effect. One of them shoves you roughly from behind, forcing you to stumble forward, away from the home that is no longer yours. The gate is already closed. You risk a single glance back. It is just a wooden door like any other. But now it is a wall between you and everything you have ever loved. The sound of the crowd follows you, a persistent, buzzing chorus of condemnation. It is the soundtrack to the death of your old life. You walk on, the absurd paper hat on your head, your world reduced to the narrow tunnel of vision it allows, and the inescapable echoing sound of judgment. The parade continues. You are led away from the familiar lanes of your childhood and onto the wider, more anonymous streets that lead toward the city's central administrative district. The gawking of strangers is somehow easier to bear than the pained and contemptuous looks of your neighbors. A stranger's scorn is abstract, impersonal, but the memory of your father's face, the echo of your mother's sob, the stinging shower of a neighbor's salt, those wounds are deep and fresh. You trudge onward, a hollowed-out shell of the man you were this morning, the tall paper cone on your head bobbing with each leaden step. Your procession stops in a dusty courtyard before one of the capital's main gates. This place is all business. Stern-faced guards move with brisk efficiency, processing papers and people. Other wretched-looking souls are here, some in chains, others bearing the marks of recent floggings. It is a human depot of misery, a collection point for the city's failures and transgressors. Two guards approach you carrying a large, menacing-looking wooden object. It's a cangue, or cowl as it's known here. It looks like a piece of minimalist furniture designed by a very angry carpenter. An end table for your head, perhaps. It consists of two thick, heavy rectangular planks of wood, bound with iron strips. In the center is a large, round hole, with two smaller holes for the wrists on either side. It is weathered and stained from use by countless others before you. The guards roughly pull your bound hands forward. They remove the ropes only to replace them with this wooden yoke. They slide the bottom plank under your hands and behind your neck, then slam the top piece down over it. The holes align perfectly around your neck and wrists. A thick wooden peg is hammered through a hole on the side, locking the two planks together with a dull, final thud. The weight is immediate and crushing. It must be at least 20 pounds, a dead, unyielding burden that settles directly onto your collarbones and the muscles of your shoulders. Suddenly, the paper hat feels blessedly, comically light. You find yourself actually missing the days just minutes ago when your only problem was looking ridiculous. Your arms are now trapped, extended in front of you in a fixed, awkward position. You can't bend your elbows, you can't turn your head properly, and you certainly can't raise your hands. The cangue was a common tool of justice and control throughout East Asia, a portable pillory designed for maximum discomfort and visibility. The size and weight were often calibrated to the crime. Your model, it seems, is for the moderately disgraced. It's not meant to kill you, just to make you wish you could disappear. Painted in bold black characters on the board, right in front of your face, is your name, your former address, and your crime: scholarly insolence. The physical torment begins at once. The rough wood chafes the skin on your neck. A deep, persistent ache starts to build between your shoulder blades. You try to adjust your posture to ease the strain, but there is no comfortable position. The device turns your own body against you. And then, a drop of sweat trickles down your temple, and an intense itch blossoms on the side of your nose. You instinctively try to lift a hand to scratch it, but you can't. Your fingers are trapped a foot away. The itch persists, maddening and unreachable. You realize with a sinking feeling that this tiny, insignificant torment is going to be your constant companion. A very, very annoying best friend for the foreseeable future. This helplessness is part of the design. You can't feed yourself or get a drink of water. For these basic acts, you will be utterly dependent on the mercy of your guards. Historians still argue whether the physical torment of punishments like the cangue was the primary goal, or if the physical suffering was considered secondary to its function as a mobile humiliation device that amplified social ostracism. For you, the distinction is academic. The pain is real and the shame is real, and they are now fused together in this heavy wooden frame locked around your neck. The guards are finished. They give you a hard shove. "Move on, insolent scholar," one of them barks. You take a clumsy, staggering step forward. The weight of the cangue throws off your balance. The paper hat sways precariously. You are now a complete caricature of a criminal, a walking sculpture of degradation. The physical weight on your shoulders is immense, but it is nothing compared to the psychological weight of what you have become. The guards give you a final hard shove and you stumble forward, joining a small, sad-looking group huddled near the courtyard gate. These are your fellow exiles. There's a man who still carries himself like an official despite his tattered robes, a woman with vacant, staring eyes, and a broad-shouldered man whose wrists and ankles are bound in heavy iron chains. Each of you is a different story of ruin, now bound together by a common fate. You are a small, mobile collection of the state's official disappointments. In the center of your group is a crude, two-wheeled ox cart. It is not for you. You are not afforded the luxury of riding. The cart is piled high with sacks of grain, water skins, and the meager belongings of the guards who will escort you. A long, thick rope is tied to the axle. One by one, the guards tie a lead from this main rope around each prisoner's waist. You are now tethered to the cart, a human tail to this slow, lumbering beast. You're officially an accessory for a very slow-moving vehicle. It's not the glamorous life you envisioned as a scholar, but you are, in a miserable sort of way, part of a team now. The small procession lurches into motion. The ox, a creature of profound and unshakable indifference, sets the pace. It is a slow, ponderous rhythm, dictated by the creak of the wooden wheels and the soft thud of hooves on the dirt road. Your guards, two grizzled men who look like they were born bored, flank the group. Their job is simply to get you from point A to point B. Whether you arrive as a living, breathing person or a well-traveled corpse seems to be a minor logistical detail for them. You are led toward Sungnyemun, the great south gate of the capital. Its massive, stone-arched gateway and soaring pagoda roof, a symbol of royal power and prestige, has always filled you with a sense of awe. Now it feels like the mouth of a monster, about to spit you out of the civilized world. Passing through it, the familiar, dense symphony of the city begins to fade behind you. The calls of merchants are replaced by the chirping of insects, the smell of cooking fires by the scent of dust and fields. You have officially left Hanyang. The journey ahead of you will be long and brutal. The Joseon road system, while functional, was not a network of pristine highways. The main arteries connecting the capital to the provinces were mostly dirt tracks, turning to impassable mud in the rain and choking dust in the heat. A journey to the southern coast, hundreds of miles away, could take weeks, and your destination, Jeju Island, was the most remote place of exile imaginable. Just outside the gate, you pass a pair of Jangsung carved wooden totem poles with fearsome, goblin-like faces, meant to guard the city and protect travelers. Other departing groups might pause to make a small prayer for a safe journey. Your sad procession trudges past them without a glance, a clear sign that you are outside the protection of gods and men. The ox plods on, its pace best described as contemplative. It gives you far too much time to think, to reflect on every single bad decision you've ever made, starting with your failure to just let that fly have your ink. Historians still argue whether the extreme slowness of exile journeys was a deliberate aspect of the punishment, designed to maximize public exposure and physical exhaustion, or simply an unavoidable logistical reality of pre-modern travel. As the kangway grinds against your neck and the rope bites into your waist, you conclude it's another one of those things that manages to be both. The sun begins to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The beauty of it feels like a personal insult. The guards call a halt in a small scrubby clearing by the side of the road. This will be your first camp. You look back. The great city of Hanyang is gone, vanished behind the rolling hills, its location marked only by a faint smudge of smoke against the darkening sky. Ahead of you, the road disappears into the twilight. The creaking of the cartwheels has stopped, but you can still feel the rhythmic tug of the rope in your mind. The journey has just begun, and its vast, monotonous emptiness already stretches out before you like a form of infinity. Sleep is a luxury you are not afforded. The hard, cold ground offers no comfort, and the wooden kangu is an impossible bedfellow. Every attempt to shift your weight sends a fresh spike of pain through your shoulders and neck. You doze in short, fitful bursts, haunted by dreams of your old life, only to be jolted awake by the ache in your bones. Before the sun has even fully risen, a guard kicks your boots and the day begins. Breakfast is a fist-sized ball of cold, cooked barley. It has the taste and texture of a construction material. You eat it slowly, painfully, trying to maneuver the dense lump to your mouth with your hands still trapped in the kangar. It is a pathetic, clumsy effort, another small degradation in a journey that is full of them. Then you walk. The rope is retied. The ox groans. The wheels creak. The monotonous rhythm of the road takes over. Days bleed into one another, marked only by the rising and setting of the sun. The journey unfolds in a series of stark contrasts. For hours you will trudge through desolate countryside. You walk alongside endless terraced rice paddies, their green shoots reflecting the sky. You climb winding paths through hills covered in gnarled pine trees, the air smelling clean and sharp. In these long, quiet stretches, there is no one to witness your shame but the guards, your fellow prisoners, and the vast, silent indifference of nature. At least the trees aren't judging you. It's a small mercy, but you'll take what you can get. The squirrels, however, seem a little skeptical. This solitude is its own kind of punishment. A hollow, aching loneliness that makes you feel like the last person on earth. Then the landscape will change. You'll see the clustered roofs of a village in the distance, and the quiet loneliness is replaced by a tense, familiar dread. The procession funnels into the narrow main street of a provincial town, and suddenly, you are back on stage. The local market is a chaotic explosion of life. There are vendors shouting their wares, the smell of grilling fish and fermenting bean paste, the squeal of pigs, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer. And in the middle of it all, your sad little parade becomes the main attraction. You're the most interesting thing to happen in this town all week. You feel like a very unpopular celebrity walking a very depressing red carpet. The gawking is relentless. People stop and stare, their mouths agape. They point at the tall paper cone on your head, at the heavy wooden stock on your shoulders. They read the characters proclaiming your crime, and the whispers begin. You hear fragments. A scholar from the capital. Disgraced his family. Look at the arrogance on his face. You pass a lively storyteller, an Ayagi gun, holding a crowd of villagers wrapped with a dramatic tale of heroes and tigers. As you pass, his audience turns as one to watch you instead, a better, more immediate story of downfall. Historians still argue whether the Joseon government intentionally routed these exile processions through populated centers to maximize their didactic effect on the populace, or if this was simply an unavoidable consequence of the main roads naturally connecting towns and villages. Either way, the effect is the same. You are a walking sermon on the price of failure. Along the road, you pass the occasional yocham, the official government relay stations. You see the clean courtyards, the stables of fresh horses, the comfortable-looking quarters for traveling officials on state business. These are oases of order and privilege, a bitter reminder of the world you once aspired to join. Your group is not even allowed to stop for water in their shadow. You are herded past like stray animals, forced to camp in the dirt a respectful distance away. As the days turn into a week, you learn to retreat inside yourself. You fix your eyes on the heels of the prisoner in front of you and let the world dissolve into a blur. The pointing fingers, the hostile stares, the whispered judgments. You build a thin wall inside your mind to keep them out. But every night when the walking stops and the silence descends, the wall crumbles. You lie on the hard ground, the day's humiliations replaying in your memory. You look up at the brilliant canopy of stars, the same stars you used to watch from the courtyard of your home. They seem impossibly far away now, cold and distant, offering no light for the endless dark road ahead. For more than a week you have walked together in near total silence, a chain gang of solitary souls. The only sounds have been the creak of the wheels, the grunt of the ox, and the occasional barked order from a guard. Your little group has had all the cheerful camaraderie of a silent meditation retreat, only with more chafing and a distinct lack of inner peace. You are bound by the same rope but separated by walls of private misery. Tonight, however, something shifts. You are struggling with your ball of barley, the kangwe making the simple act of eating a humiliating battle. Tilt your head back further. Let it drop in. The voice is a low rasp. It comes from the man next to you, the disgraced official. He says it without looking at you, his gaze fixed on the dying campfire. It's the first time one prisoner has spoken to another. It's a small crack in the ice, and through it, stories begin to seep. His name, you learn, is Lord Kim. He was a mid-level minister in the Board of Punishments, ironically enough. His crime was entirely political. He aligned himself with a powerful court faction that, a month ago, abruptly became the wrong faction. I praised the wrong poem at the wrong banquet, he says with a dry, bitter laugh. His crime was a high-stakes version of picking the wrong team in a fantasy sports league. The consequences, however, were slightly more severe than losing the office pool. The big man in chains, whose name is Bay, listens to Lord Kim's story with a grunt of contempt. His own tale is simpler. A dispute over a gambling debt in a tavern, a flash of anger, a knife. The other man died. He was a cheat, Bay says, as if that explains everything. He looks at his own heavy iron shackles, then at your wooden kang and paper hat, and seems to find the comparison baffling. The quiet woman, Isul, speaks last, and only in a whisper. She was a dancer, she says, a courtesan at a high-end gibang. An influential client became obsessed with her, but she refused his advances. The nobleman, infuriated by the rejection, accused her of witchcraft, of using dark magic to bewitch men. The charge was absurd, but a nobleman's word carries more weight than a courtesan's denial. You all wear the same style of conical paper hat, but the characters painted on them tell your different stories. On yours, Ao, Oman, for arrogance or insolence. On Lord Kim's, Dang, for factionalism. On Bai's, Bao, Pak, for violence, and on Isul's, the character Yin, for lewdness or depravity. Each hat is a custom-made billboard of your specific ruin. When you finally explain that your own downfall was caused by a drop of ink from your brush, Bay, the murderer, just stares at you for a full minute before slowly shaking his head. You've somehow managed to disappoint a man convicted of actual, serious crimes. This is the strange, motley society of the exiled. Joseon law cast a wide net. and exile was the punishment for a vast range of transgressions, from the political scheming of high officials to the violent brawls of commoners and the perceived moral failures of women. Historians still argue whether the practice of exiling criminals from different social strata together was a deliberate state policy to break down class distinctions and foster a common criminal identity, or simply a matter of logistical convenience for the guards. Looking at your small group, you suspect it's the latter. Lord Kim, using his years of experience, shares a piece of exile lore. "Watch the guards' top knots," he whispers, after the men in question have moved out of earshot. The one with the neatly tied knot, the one who still cares about appearance, he is the one who will take a bribe to look the other way. The one with the messy knot, he has nothing to lose. He is the dangerous one. It is a grim, practical piece of advice from a world you never imagined you'd inhabit. That night, for the first time, you don't feel entirely alone. A fragile, unspoken camaraderie has formed. You are all damaged, all disgraced, but you are now a collective. You are Lord Kim the politician, Bae the thug, Isul the dancer, and you, the scholar of the inkblot. A broken set of human beings tethered to the same cart, trudging toward the same forsaken island, as you lie on the cold ground. The presence of their quiet breathing nearby is a small flickering warmth against the vast dark emptiness of the road. Your newfound camaraderie is a fragile thing, a secret whispered in the dark. In the daylight, under the watchful eyes of your two guards, you are once again silent, isolated figures. But the guards notice the subtle shift. They see the quick glances, the way you now move in concert, subtly helping each other without words. Your small community is a challenge to their absolute authority, and they are quick to reassert their control. They are the absolute monarchs of this sad, mobile kingdom of 4 prisoners and an ox. Their royal decrees are usually just walk faster or stop complaining. There are 2 of them, and you quickly learn their rhythms. The senior guard, Sergeant Kwan, is the one Lord Kim warned you about. His top knot is a messy, careless bundle, and his face is set in a permanent scowl. He is a man simmering in a stew of resentment. In Joseon's rigid class society, soldiers like him were commoners, often conscripted, poorly paid, and looked down upon by the very scholars and officials he is now escorting to their ruin. This journey is his chance to wield power, and he savors it. Kwan seems to have 2 primary moods, actively unpleasant and passively unpleasant. You quickly learn to hope for the latter. The younger guard, Corporal Park, is the neat one. He is quieter, more detached, his face a mask of professional boredom. He follows Kwan's lead, but without the same malicious relish. His cruelty is one of indifference. He is simply doing a job he dislikes, and you are the unfortunate objects he has to transport. He is the weak link, the potential source of mercy, but his mercy is as unpredictable as Kwan's anger. Your survival, you realize, depends entirely on the whims of these 2 men. The law of the road is the law of their moods. One afternoon, after a long, hot march, you reach a clear, cool stream. You are desperate with thirst, your tongue thick in your mouth. But Kwan declares the water is too clean for criminals and forces you to march for another hour until you reach a muddy, stagnant pool. The next morning, however, Corporal Park, while distributing the barley rations, accidentally fumbles a small, precious strip of dried persimmon, which lands right at Lord Kim's feet. Park pointedly looks the other way. Lord Kim discreetly breaks the sweet, chewy morsel into 4 tiny pieces, a moment of shared, secret luxury. Their whims dictate the physical torture of the journey. If they are feeling energetic, they will set a punishing pace, forcing you to half-jog to keep up with the cart, the wooden kang bouncing and slamming against your collarbones until they are bruised and raw. If they are lazy, they will let the ox slow to a near standstill, prolonging the agony of the day, making you bake under the sun for hours to cover a few miserable miles. In the evenings, their moods are often set by a game of chance. They have a set of dice carved from animal knuckle bones, goal pie, and they gamble for their wages. The fate of your next meal can depend entirely on whether Sergeant Kwan rolls a winning combination. It's not the most reassuring system of justice. Historians still argue about the extent of oversight the central government had on its provincial agents. Were exile guards like Quan and Park subject to any real review upon their return? Or did they operate with near total autonomy once they left the shadow of the capital? On this dusty road, hundreds of miles from any real authority, you know the answer. They are the law. One evening, Quan, having lost badly at dice, decides to make a point. He singles out Isul, mocking her for her former profession, his words coarse and cruel. Bei, the thug, tenses, a low growl rumbling in his chest. For a moment it feels like violence will erupt. But Lord Kim catches Bei's eye and gives a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of his head. An open defiance would only bring a flogging or worse for all of them. You all fall silent, enduring the guard's tirade, a shared, bitter pill of helplessness. You lie down to sleep that night, the guard's ugly laughter still echoing in your ears, understanding the fundamental truth of your new existence. There is no appeal here. There is no justice. There is only the unpredictable whim of your masters and the silent, stubborn solidarity of the damned. Weeks of walking have ground you down to a state of near-animal existence. The world has shrunk to the rhythmic plod of the ox, the chafing of the cangue, and the gnawing ache of hunger. Morale in your little group is at an all-time low after Sergeant Kwan's latest bout of casual cruelty. You have begun to believe that the world outside of your small suffering circle has forgotten what kindness is. You trudge into another village, this one smaller and poorer than the others. It's nestled in a high mountain valley, a cluster of thatched roof huts clinging to the hillside. The people here don't gawk with the same aggressive curiosity you've grown used to. They watch you pass with a quiet, weary sorrow, as if your suffering is a familiar sight. The guards halt the cart by the village well to replenish their water skins. Sergeant Quan immediately gets into a loud, overbearing argument with the village headman over the price of a few bundles of straw. As they haggle, the rest of you stand tethered to the cart, heads bowed in the afternoon sun. You tense up as you see an old woman detach herself from a group of onlookers and start walking directly toward you. Your stranger danger instinct, honed by weeks of public scorn, is screaming. You brace yourself for a lecture, a curse, maybe another handful of purifying salt. But she doesn't speak. She is ancient, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her back bent with age. She stops a few feet away, her eyes scanning the four of you. There is no judgment in her gaze, only a deep, profound pity. From the folds of her worn hemp clothes, she produces a small, roasted sweet potato, still warm. She breaks it into 4 roughly equal pieces with her gnarled fingers and holds them out on her open palm. Her gesture is simple, clear, and utterly shocking. Corporal Park, the younger guard, turns and sees her. He opens his mouth to shout, to drive her away, but he hesitates. He looks at the old woman's calm, fearless face, then at your own group's stunned expressions of disbelief. He looks back at Quan, who is still deep in his argument. Then Park does something extraordinary. He becomes intensely interested in a small, fluffy cloud floating high in the sky. It is, you surmise, the most fascinating cloud he has ever seen in his entire life. You appreciate his sudden, passionate interest in meteorology. Lord Kim, the hardened cynic, is the first to react. He takes a piece of the sweet potato with a trembling hand, his throat too tight to speak. Bei, the brawler, simply stares at the ground, overwhelmed, until the woman gently presses a piece into his hand. Isul gives a small, graceful bow of thanks, a gesture from a life of courtly manners you thought she had forgotten. The old woman then turns to you, and you take the last piece. The warmth of it seeps into your cold fingers. You lift it to your mouth. The taste is revelatory. It is sweet, soft, and smoky. It might as well be the most exquisite dish from the royal kitchens. Your taste buds, so abused by an endless diet of bland barley, are so shocked they nearly throw a parade. The woman's compassion is a mystery. Perhaps it stems from the quiet persistence of Buddhist or shamanic beliefs in these remote areas, traditions that valued mercy and charity far more than the rigid judgmental Confucianism of the state. Historians still debate the relationship between the official orthodoxy and the folk beliefs of the common people. Was it all conflict, or was there a quiet coexistence? This woman, with a simple string of wooden beads around her wrist, seems to embody that gentle resistance. The moment is over as quickly as it began. The old woman gives a final, compassionate look to all of you, and then shuffles away, disappearing back into the fabric of the village. Sergeant Quan finishes his business, and with a final curse at the headman, he barks the order to move on. The ox groans, the wheels creak, and you are pulled away from the village well. Nothing has changed. The Kangway is just as heavy, the sun just as hot, the road just as long. But inside you, a tiny flickering flame has been rekindled. It is the memory of a stranger's kindness, a reminder that humanity exists beyond the grasp of your captors. It is a small, warm thing to carry in the cold, hard days ahead. The memory of the old woman's sweet potato is a tiny, warm coal you carry inside you, but the road does its best to extinguish it. The journey enters its most arduous phase as you leave the rolling hills behind and begin to climb into the mountainous spine of the peninsula. The landscape that unfolds before you is one of staggering, heartbreaking beauty. You are getting a free, extended tour of the country's most scenic spots. The amenities are terrible, the company is questionable, but the views are, you have to admit, spectacular. It's the worst-rated guided tour in all of Joseon. One morning, you crest a high pass and the world opens up beneath you. Valleys filled with a soft sea of morning mist, the peaks of other mountains rising from it like islands. The forests that carpet the slopes are ablaze with the colors of autumn. Fiery maples, brilliant yellow ginkgo trees, and the deep somber green of the pines. You walk along streams so clear you can count the pebbles on the bottom. This is the landscape that poets have written about for 1,000 years, the scenery that fills the famous landscape paintings, the Sansuwa. Mountains, in the Korean imagination, are sacred places, the home of spirits, a source of profound inspiration. For you, they are just a series of vertical, soul-crushing obstacles. This is the profound cruelty of your situation. You are surrounded by a beauty that has no meaning for you. The majestic, mist-shrouded peak does not care about your innocence or your shame. The brilliant sunset that paints the clouds in shades of rose and gold is not a gift for you to enjoy. It is simply the sun setting. Nature's complete and utter indifference to your plight is a constant, silent companion. At first it feels like an insult, a beautiful world that is excluding you from its grace. But as the days wear on, that indifference begins to feel strangely calming. Your personal disgrace, which felt like the center of the universe in Hanyang, seems impossibly small out here. Literary scholars still argue about the traditional East Asian perception of nature. Was it seen as a moral force that reflected the state of human affairs, where floods and droughts were signs of a king's misrule? Or was it an amoral sphere, a separate reality completely indifferent to human drama? As you trudge through this vast, silent wilderness, you are a living test case for the latter. One morning, a pair of magpies, traditionally seen as bearers of good tidings, lands on a branch near the road and begins to chatter. Lord Kim lets out a short, cynical laugh. "Good news," he mutters. "Perhaps they're announcing that our barley rations have been increased by 3 grains. Nature's indifference is not just an aesthetic quality, it is a physical one. The beauty is matched by an unforgiving harshness. A sudden autumn storm sweeps through the valleys. The sky, a moment ago a brilliant blue, turns a bruised purple. The rain comes down not in drops but in solid, freezing sheets. The sky has decided to take a very long, very cold shower, and you are the unfortunate soap dish. The path dissolves into a treacherous slurry of mud. Every step is a struggle to stay upright. The wind howls through the passes, a physical force that steals the breath from your lungs and the warmth from your body. You are soaked, shivering, and miserable, your paper hat sagging into a pathetic, pulpy mess on your head. That night you make a miserable camp in a sodden clearing. Huddled together for warmth, you look out at the world. The storm has passed, and the moon has risen, casting a clean silver light over the rain-washed forest. It is once again painfully beautiful. But something inside you has shifted. The beauty is no longer an insult, and the harshness is no longer a personal attack. They are just 2 sides of the same vast, impersonal truth. You are a tiny, insignificant creature, a speck of dust in this immense, uncaring, and majestic landscape. And in that terrifying realization there is a strange and unexpected flicker of peace. The strange peace you found in the indifferent mountains is a fragile thing, easily shattered by the growl in your stomach. You may feel like an insignificant speck in the cosmos, but that speck gets hungry. The journey presses on, and with every passing day, the gnawing emptiness inside you becomes a more central part of your reality. Your entire existence has been reduced to the most basic inputs and outputs: walking and enduring, sleeping and waking, and of course, eating. The menu for this journey is refreshingly simple. Today's special is a ball of barley. Tomorrow's special is also a ball of barley. The chef, it seems, is a real one-trick pony. One evening, as you are all miserably chewing your dense, gritty rations, Lord Kim begins to speak in a low voice. "They are not just feeding us," he says, holding up his own lump of cold grain. "They are teaching us." He explains that the food itself is a carefully chosen instrument of your punishment. In Joseon, what you ate was a direct and public statement of who you were. White rice, polished and pure, was the food of the Yangban, the scholar official class. It was the grain of gentlemen. Barley, on the other hand, was the food of peasants, of soldiers, of servants. It was the food of the common and the coarse. With every mouthful, Lord Kim explains, his voice laced with bitter irony, they are reminding us of our new station. We are no longer the men who eat rice. We are the men who are fed barley. Historians still debate the primary purpose of prison diets in pre-modern Korea. Was it purely a matter of economic efficiency, feeding prisoners as cheaply as possible? Or was it a consciously designed tool of psychological control and social re-engineering? As you look at the sad gray lump in your hand, you have no doubt it is both. It is cheap, and it is devastatingly effective. You've eaten so much of the stuff you are fairly certain your internal organs are slowly being replaced with a thick, fibrous porridge. The punishment is also in what's missing. In a proper meal, even for a humble family, would include banchan, an assortment of side dishes. The fiery, fermented crunch of kimchi, the savory saltiness of pickled vegetables, perhaps a small piece of steamed fish. Your meal has none of this. It is a monolithic, featureless lump. Its blandness is symbolic of the life they have given you, stripped of all variety, complexity, and pleasure. As you chew, your brain, in a desperate attempt to entertain itself, begins replaying your greatest meals of all time. A vivid memory surfaces, your last New Year's feast. You can almost taste the rich, savory broth of the beef rib soup, the smoky char of grilled marinated meat, the dozen different flavors of the side dishes spread across the table. It is a delicious and exquisitely painful form of self-torture. Lord Kim tells you about a superstition among long-term prisoners. If you find a single, unhusked grain of barley in your ration, a grain still in its tough, inedible shell, it is an omen, a sign of a coming change in your fortune. Every meal becomes a small, desperate treasure hunt, but you never find one. The rations are uniformly, depressingly perfect in their coarseness. The portion size is another part of the calculation. It is just enough calories to prevent you from collapsing, just enough fuel to allow you to walk all day. But it is never enough to make you feel strong, or even truly full. It maintains a constant low-level state of hunger, a physical manifestation of your powerlessness and your complete dependence on the whims of the guards for your survival. You finish your meal. The hunger remains, a dull, persistent ache deep in your belly. You look at the others. Bae, the thug, eats his with a grim, mechanical efficiency. Asul eats hers slowly, delicately, as if trying to maintain a shred of dignity in the face of this ultimate indignity. Lord Kim eats his with the weary air of a man analyzing his own slow demise. You are all bound by this shared sustenance. It is not just food. It is a sermon delivered 3 times a day, a constant reinforcement of a single, brutal message. You are no longer who you once were. You are no longer defined by your poetry, your politics, your passions, or your past. You are what you eat, and you are barley. After what feels like a lifetime of walking, the world changes. The air begins to carry a new scent, a sharp, briny tang that stings your nostrils. The low hills fall away, and one afternoon, you crest a rise and see it. The sea. It's a boundless, shimmering expanse of gray blue, stretching to a horizon so flat and absolute it feels like the edge of the world. It's the biggest moat you can imagine, and you know with a sinking certainty that your new prison lies on the other side. Your procession finally clatters into a port town on the southern coast. It is a chaotic, vibrant, and filthy place, utterly different from the orderly world of the capital. The air is thick with the smell of drying fish, salt, and wet ropes. Weather-beaten sailors with foreign-looking tattoos shout in gruff accents. Merchants haggle over crates of goods from far-flung shores. Your sad little group, with your paper hats and wooden kang, is just another piece of strange cargo in this messy hub of arrivals and departures. You are led to a small, shabby-looking fishing junk tied to a pier. This is your ferry to the island. The vessel that will take you to your new home looks like it was built from spare parts and held together by stubbornness and wishful thinking. You're not sure if it's a boat or a very elaborate swimming test. You are herded onto the open deck and shoved into a corner exposed to the elements. The ropes are cast off, the sail is hoisted, and the mainland begins to recede. The crossing is a new circle of hell. The sea is choppy, and the small boat pitches and rolls with a violent, nauseating rhythm. You discover that the human body can, in fact, try to turn itself inside out. It's a fascinating, if deeply unpleasant, biological fact. Lord Kim, the stoic official, is overcome, his face a pale green. Bay, the tough, endures it with his eyes shut, his knuckles white. Isel seems to find a place of calm in the chaos, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Cold spray lashes over the side of the boat, soaking your clothes and chilling you to the bone. For a full day and night, you are trapped in this state of misery. And then, a dark volcanic smudge appears on the horizon. Jeju Island. For centuries, this island has been the ultimate destination for Joseon's exiles. Its remoteness, its famously harsh weather, and its distinct local culture made it the perfect open-air prison, a place to dump the politically inconvenient and the socially undesirable, effectively erasing them from the world. As you draw closer, the island's features become clearer. It is not the gentle, pine-clad landscape of the mainland. The coastline is a jagged, black fortress of volcanic rock, pounded by a relentless surf. The fields beyond are a patchwork of green and gray, divided by low, dark walls built from the same volcanic stone. At the center of the island, the massive sleeping volcano of Mount Halison dominates the sky. It does not look like a welcoming place. You remember hearing of the island's three abundances, the Samdado. The moment you step off the boat, you are intimately acquainted with the first two: wind and stones. The wind is not a gentle breeze. It is a physical presence, a constant howling gale that seems to want to strip the flesh from your bones. And the stones are everywhere, black, porous, and unforgiving. Historians still argue about the degree of cultural autonomy Jeju maintained from the mainland. Was it a proper province, or a world unto itself? As you stand on the shore, the wind tearing at you, surrounded by a landscape that looks like the surface of the moon, you feel as though you have left the kingdom entirely. The local guards take charge of you. Your journey is over. Sergeant Kwan and Corporal Park, their duty discharged, turn and get back on the boat without a word or a backward glance. You watch them go, these men who have been the absolute masters of your existence for weeks. You are left standing on a black sand beach on a windswept island at the end of the world. The long road is finished. Your exile has just begun. You are now the property of the Jeju Provincial Administration. The local guards who take charge of you are a different breed from the mainlanders. They are islanders, their faces weathered by a lifetime of wind and sea, their Korean spoken with a thick, almost incomprehensible dialect. They look you over, your fancy scholar's robes now filthy rags, your faces gaunt from the journey, with a complete lack of interest. To them, you are not a special delivery of disgraced capital elites. You are just another shipment of state-issued problems. You are marched from the port to the exile compound, your new home. It has a certain rustic charm, if your definition of charming includes unrelenting wind and the color gray. It's a collection of low, long buildings constructed from the island's black volcanic stone, roofed with heavy thatch tied down with thick ropes to keep it from blowing away. The interior design could be described as early despair. Inside, it's a single large communal room with a dirt floor and wooden platforms for sleeping. The wind finds 100 cracks in the walls to whistle through, a constant, mournful sound. The next morning, your sentence of Do-young penal servitude begins. The heavy wooden cangue is unlocked and removed from your neck, a moment of incredible physical relief immediately replaced by the dread of what is to come. The cangue is impractical for labor. The island itself is now your prison. You are led, along with Lord Kim, Bei, and a dozen other male exiles to a nearby quarry. Your job is simple: to hack out chunks of the sharp, abrasive volcanic rock and carry them to carts. This is the raw material for the island's endless stone walls and government buildings. Your hands, which have spent a lifetime holding nothing heavier than a brush, are completely unsuited for the task. You quickly learn that a nuanced philosophical argument about the nature of virtue is of absolutely no use when attempting to lift a very large, very sharp rock. Within the first hour, you have a dozen blisters. By noon, most of them have torn open, leaving your palms raw and bleeding. The physical shock is total. Every muscle you didn't know you had screams in protest. You are becoming an expert in the field of developing blisters. If there were a civil service exam for this, you would finally pass with flying colors. Your small group adapts in different ways. Bei, the brawler, is in his element. The simple, brutal physicality of the work is something he understands. His strength, useless in the capital society, makes him a valuable worker here, and he earns a grudging respect from the guards. Lord Kim, old and unused to labor, struggles terribly, but he uses his mind, quickly figuring out the principles of leverage to move stones more efficiently and getting himself assigned the task of keeping the tally, a less backbreaking job. Isel, as a woman, is assigned to the kitchens, a different kind of drudgery involving grinding grain, hauling water, and cooking the bland, unfamiliar local food. A thin millet porridge with a few bits of salted fish. The sentence of hard labor for a disgraced young man like yourself was a tricky thing. High-ranking ministers were often treated with deference by local officials, their exile a form of comfortable house arrest. But you are a nobody, a minor scholar whose crime was disrespect. There are no special considerations for you. The local officials are not interested in punishing your soul. They are interested in meeting their quarrying quota. Historians still argue about the economic impact of penal servitude in places like Jeju. Was it a significant source of labor, or was the punishment itself the primary goal? As you haul another rock, your back screaming, you feel like a very inefficient part of a very cruel machine. At the end of the day, you are marched back to the barracks. You are given your meal, and then you collapse onto your sleeping mat. The physical exhaustion is so complete, so profound, that it scours everything else from your mind. There is no room for memories of Hanyang, for shame, for philosophical reflection. There is only the ache in your back, the sting in your hands, and the blissful promise of a few hours of oblivion before it all begins again. This is the point of the grind, to erase the scholar and forge a beast of burden in his place. The seasons on Jeju turn with a brutal, unsentimental force. The crisp autumn gives way to a damp, biting winter. The daily grind in the quarry continues, a monotonous rhythm of lift, carry, and ache. Your body has hardened, the blisters on your hands replaced by thick calluses. The scholar's softness has been scoured away, leaving behind something tougher, more resilient, and much more tired. And all the while, you wear the hat. It is a constant, ridiculous companion to your misery. The wind tugs at it, the rain soaks it, and the other prisoners, long past caring about the symbolism, occasionally laugh at its increasingly pathetic state. The hat, which was so carefully constructed in that dark prison cell, is now in a slow-motion battle with the elements, and it is losing. The relentless Jeju wind is its primary tormentor, constantly trying to peel it from your head, weakening the glued seams with its ceaseless pressure. Then there are the winter rains, not gentle showers but driving, horizontal assaults of icy water. The Hanji paper, famously durable, holds up longer than you'd expect, but it is not invincible. The hat gets soaked through, becoming a heavy, sodden pulp that sags and loses its shape. It dries in the weak winter sun, but it never regains its proud, conical form. It is warped now, bent and slightly buckled. Your hat is starting to look less like an instrument of state punishment and more like a failed elementary school craft project left out in a hurricane. The salt from the sea air carried on the wind works its way into the fibers, and the rice paste that binds the layers begins to lose its integrity. The sharp point of the cone has long since been blunted. The edges have started to fray. The bold character Ao for arrogance has been bleached by the sun and blurred by the rain until it is little more than an unfortunate gray smudge. You've been officially demoted from arrogant scholar to vaguely smudged dude. This slow, undignified decay is a perfect mirror of your own internal state. The sharp, well-ordered mind that could recite the Confucian classics is now blunted by exhaustion. The proud identity of a Hanyang scholar has been battered and warped into this new shape: a laborer, an exile, a number. The memories of your old life are like the fading ink on the hat. They are still there, but their lines are no longer clear, their meaning less potent. You are disintegrating, just like the paper on your head. Historians still argue about the intended lifespan of these instruments of shame. Were they meant to be durable symbols lasting for years? Or was their eventual decay part of the punishment's narrative arc, a metaphor for the crime itself slowly eroding? Watching your hat fall apart, you feel it's the latter. One afternoon, a particularly strong gust of wind catches a loose, frayed edge at the hat's rim. A small, ragged flake of paper tears free and flutters away, tumbling over the black rocks before disappearing into the gray sea. You stop working for a moment to watch it go. It's a tiny, meaningless event, but it feels like a milestone. It's the first piece of your sentence to literally dissolve into nothing. You think to yourself, "Godspeed, little paper flake, be free." Eventually, the hat becomes so tattered, so completely devoid of its original form and authority, that it ceases to function even as a symbol. It's no longer an object of fear or respect, just a piece of garbage. One morning, as you line up for the quarry, one of the local guards, a man who has never spoken a word to you, simply reaches out, plucks the ruined cone from your head, and tosses it onto a rubbish heap. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't give you a new one. The punishment, it seems, has simply expired. You stand there for a moment, the wind feeling strange on your bare head. You look at the pathetic, disintegrating object on the pile of refuse. Its destruction doesn't bring a feeling of triumph or relief. It just feels like a quiet, final confirmation that the scholar who first wore it is well and truly gone. The hat is gone, and with its disappearance, a strange lightness settles over you. The most visible symbol of your past is now just a memory. Your focus narrows to the immediate, the tangible, the now. And in the now, you are a laborer who needs to survive the day. You still possess the mind of a scholar. You can quote the sages, you can compose poetry, you can debate the finer points of Neo-Confucian metaphysics, and you quickly realize that this entire library of knowledge is worth less than a single dried fish. You know how to write a killer 8-legged essay on the mandate of heaven. Unfortunately, you can't eat it, and it does a terrible job of keeping you warm at night. Your education was for a life that no longer exists. A new curriculum is required, and your teachers are the hardened men around you. The most important of these is Bei. In Hanyang, he was a lowlife, a man you would have crossed the street to avoid. Here on Jeju in the quarry, he is a master craftsman of survival, and you are his unlikely apprentice. His teaching method consists mostly of grunting and pointing, but it is surprisingly effective. He's the Yoda of manual labor, if Yoda was a convicted murderer with a gambling problem. He shows you how to choose a stone, how to find its natural breaking point. He corrects your posture, showing you how to lift with your legs and not your back, a concept that is utterly foreign to a man who has spent his life sitting at a desk. You learn the rhythm of the work. The secret is not in explosive effort, but in a steady, sustainable pace that conserves energy over the long, brutal day. Lord Kim, meanwhile, tutors you in a different subject, the Byzantine social politics of the exile compound. He teaches you how to read the local guards and officials, the Hyangni who run this small fiefdom. These men are not the ideologically driven ministers of the capital. They are pragmatic, often corrupt, and susceptible to flattery and small bribes if you know how to offer them. You learn which guard is lazy, which is cruel, which one misses his family on the mainland and might be softened by a respectfully shared story. It is a grim and cynical education in human nature. Historians still argue about the social dynamics within Joseon exile communities, Did the rigid class structures of the mainland persist, or did a new, more practical hierarchy emerge based on survival skills? In your compound, the answer is clear. Bay, the brawler, holds more real status than Lord Kim, the former minister, because his skills are more valuable. A new social order has been born from shared misery. You learn from others too. An old fisherman, exiled for smuggling, teaches you how to spot the places on the rocky shore where edible limpets cling to the rocks, a potential supplement to your meager diet. You learn to read the clouds and the direction of the wind. You can now tell from the color of the western sky in the evening whether the next day will bring rain. It's not as intellectually impressive as memorizing the 4 books and 5 classics, but on this island, it is an infinitely more useful skill. The convicts even have their own silent language, a sort of prison sign code. A hand casually scratching an ear means a guard is in a foul mood. A certain way of stacking your tools at the end of the day means you have something to trade. You learn to speak this new language of the dispossessed. One afternoon, you see the telltale dark clouds gathering over Mount Halasan. While the other newer exiles continue their work, you, Bay, and the other veterans quietly begin to secure the tools and cover the stacks of cut stone. The guards mock your caution. An hour later, a ferocious squall sweeps down from the mountain, drenching everyone and everything left exposed. The head guard gives you a grudging, almost imperceptible nod of approval. It is a small victory, but it is one you earned not with your old knowledge but with your new. You are no longer just a scholar enduring a punishment. You are becoming a survivor, learning the grim calculus of this new life, and you are, against all odds, adapting. Another year passes, then another. The seasons of Jeju cycle through their rhythms of wind, rain, sun, and snow, and you cycle with them. You have been on this island for so long that you've started to recognize individual rocks in the quarry, giving them names based on their stubbornness or shape. The daily routine of hard labor is no longer a shock. It is the fundamental law of your existence, as natural and inevitable as the tides. You are a survivor. But survival has come at a cost you never anticipated. At night, when the physical work is done and your exhausted body lies still on the sleeping mat, you engage in a private, desperate ritual. You try to remember. You close your eyes and attempt to walk the streets of Hanyang, to enter the gate of your family home, to sit in your old study. It is a desperate effort to keep the past alive, to remind yourself that you were once someone else, someone more than this calloused, weary creature who hauls rocks for a living. But the act becomes harder with each passing year. The faces are the first things to betray you. You try to conjure an image of your father. The memory of him standing at the gate, his face a mask of cold duty, is still sharp and painful. But what did he look like before that? What did he look like when he was proud of you? You try to picture him smiling, to recall the specific pattern of wrinkles around his eyes. But the image is blurry, indistinct. It's like a watercolor painting left out in the rain, the colors running together into a vague impression of a man. Your mother's face is even more elusive. You can still hear the echo of her single choked sob, a sound that will haunt you forever. But her face. Was her hair parted on the left or the right? Did she have a small mole beside her nose? You can't be sure. Trying to assemble her features in your mind is like trying to catch smoke in your hands. You know the essence of her is there, but the details, the vital, living details, just slip through your fingers. This loss feels like a profound betrayal of your duty as a son. The core tenet of Jisa, the ancestor rites that bind your whole society together, is remembrance. And you are failing. It's not just your family. The faces of your old friends, the fellow scholars you once debated with through the night, have all merged into one generic hazy image of a young man in robes. The sensory world of your past is fading too. The specific smell of your father's ink, the taste of your mother's kimchi stew, the feeling of fine silk against your skin. These sensations are being overwritten by the relentless, monotonous sensory input of Jeju. The howl of the wind, the salty spray of the sea, the gritty texture of volcanic stone. Psychologists and historians still argue about the nature of memory and long-term trauma. Is this forgetting a passive decay, or is it an active, subconscious coping mechanism, a way for your mind to protect itself from the pain of a past you can never reclaim? Whatever the reason, the result is the same. The faces that are sharp and clear in your mind now are the ones you see every day. Bae's scarred cheek, Lord Kim's perpetually weary eyes, Isol's quiet, resilient face. These broken people have become your family. A deeply dysfunctional one, to be sure, but your loyalties have shifted. They are your reality now. You lie there in the dark, a hollow ache in your chest. The loss is no longer a sharp, stabbing grief. It is a chronic condition, a part of who you are. And in a final, quiet moment of horror, you realize you can no longer clearly picture your own face from before. The ambitious, smooth-faced young scholar is a ghost. The only face you can truly summon is the one you sometimes glimpse in a rain puddle. A stranger gaunt and weathered with the deadened eyes of a man who has been away from home for a very, very long time. The years grind on, smoothing the sharp edges of your grief into a dull, chronic ache. You are no longer waiting for anything. You are simply existing. The world is the quarry, the barracks, the wind, and the sea. Hope is a word from a language you have forgotten how to speak. The day begins like any other. The cold morning air, the familiar weight of the stone-cutting tools, the rhythmic chip-chip-chip that is the soundtrack of your life. You are hauling a block of basalt with Bae when a shout goes up from the watchtower overlooking the harbor. A ship, not a fishing boat or a local trader, a government vessel from the mainland, its banners snapping crisply in the wind. A sight so rare you wonder for a moment if you are hallucinating from the sun. It's either an important messenger or a very well-dressed fleet of pirates. Work in the quarry halts. Guards and prisoners alike stand and stare as the ship expertly navigates the harbor and drops anchor. A small boat is lowered and a figure is rowed ashore. Even from a distance, he is an alien creature. He is dressed in the immaculate, brightly colored silk robes of a court official. He looks so clean you suspect a single drop of Jeju rain would cause him to dissolve. Word spreads through the compound like wildfire. A royal envoy. All exiles are to be assembled in the main courtyard. Immediately, you are herded from the quarry, your heart beginning a strange, unfamiliar rhythm in your chest. You gather in the windswept courtyard, a motley crowd of weathered, ragged men and women. The local garrison commander stands nervously, while the official from the capital stands before him holding a long, ornate scroll case. The official performs a brief, solemn ritual, bowing to the north in the direction of Hanyang before taking out the scroll. He begins to read. His voice is high and clear, his courtly accent a sound from another universe. The decree begins with grim news. The king, the one who sentenced you, is dead. A long and prosperous reign has ended. There is a ripple of shock through the crowd. In his place, his son has ascended the dragon throne. And, as is custom, the new king wishes to begin his reign with an act of magnanimous grace. It was common for a new monarch to grant widespread amnesties upon taking power. Historians still argue about the motives. Were they genuine acts of benevolence or cynical political moves to clear the board and win favor? As the envoy's voice rings out across the courtyard, you don't care about the motive. You only care about the words. By the grace of the heavens and the will of the new Son of Heaven, the envoy proclaims, clemency is granted to many who have erred against the former reign. He begins to list the categories of prisoners to be pardoned, and all those exiled for minor political offenses who have shown remorse. Your eyes flick to Lord Kim. A muscle twitches in his jaw. All those convicted of non-capital crimes who have served more than 7 years of their sentence with good conduct. Your own sentence was indefinite, but you have been here nearly a decade. All women convicted of moral crimes whose families have petitioned for their return. Isol brings a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide. The word pardon hangs in the air. You haven't heard it in so long your brain isn't sure what to do with it. It's a foreign concept, a ghost from a past life. After years of burying every last shred of hope, a tiny, terrifying green shoot is forcing its way through the barren soil of your soul. You look at your friends. Lord Kim's cynical mask has slipped. There is a flicker of something wild and desperate in his eyes. Even Bay is listening with a new, focused intensity. The monotonous, howling wind of Jeju suddenly feels different. It feels like a wind of change. The envoy has read the general terms of the amnesty, but everything now hinges on the specifics, on the list of names that will follow. For the first time in years, the future is no longer a straight, unending line. It is a question mark. The envoy from the capital has done his part. His grand pronouncements delivered, he retreats to the comfort of his ship, leaving behind a compound buzzing with a dangerous, intoxicating cocktail of hope and dread. The real power now shifts to the local garrison commander. The envoy has handed him a second, much thicker scroll. This is not the poetic, sweeping decree of a benevolent king. This is the fine print, the dense, bureaucratic text filled with clauses, sub-clauses, and endless exceptions. It is written in a version of the language so formal and convoluted, it makes your old civil service exam questions look like a children's picture book. The commander, a gruff military man more comfortable with a sword than a legal document, takes the scroll into his small office. The entire population of the compound holds its collective breath, waiting. The feeling has gone from 0 hope to 100% hope, and has now settled into a solid 50% of pure gut-wrenching anxiety. It's an emotional roller coaster, and everyone wants to get off. Work is unofficially suspended. No one can focus on quarrying stone when their entire future is being decided in that small stone hut. You gather with your small makeshift family, Lord Kim, Isol, and Bay, and try to decipher your fates. As snippets of information and rumor leak from the commander's office, the beautiful clarity of the pardon dissolves into a muddy, frustrating ambiguity. Lord Kim, whose hopes had soared the highest, is the first to have them complicated. A clerk whispers that the category of minor political offenses, it comes with a major caveat. The pardon only applies if the offender a specific political faction is no longer deemed a threat to the stability of the throne. Is his faction pardoned, or are they still on the outs? His freedom is conditional, dependent on the political weather in a capital he hasn't seen in a decade. Isol's situation is even more precarious. Her pardon is contingent upon a formal petition from her family. Has one been sent? Has it been received? Was it written in the proper form, with the correct honorifics? Her fate rests in the hands of people who may have already written her out of their lives to save themselves from disgrace. Bay, who had allowed himself a flicker of optimism, learns that the category of non-capital crimes explicitly excludes acts of extreme violence resulting in death, even if it was just a tavern brawl. His pardon, once a possibility, now seems deeply doubtful. And then there is you. Your crime of scholarly insolence, of marring an exam paper, is so unusual it doesn't fit neatly into any category. You're a legal edge case, a bureaucratic footnote. It's not exactly the kind of scholarly recognition you were once hoping for. Are you a political prisoner? Not really. Did you commit a violent crime? No. You are a conundrum, and your freedom depends on the tired, likely unenthusiastic interpretation of this one local official. The Joseon government, for all its philosophical underpinnings, was a bureaucracy, and it ran on paper and precedent. A royal decree was never a simple command. It was the beginning of a long, complex administrative process. Historians still argue about the implementation of these pardons. Did local officials wield real discretionary power, or were they just rubber stamps? Watching the commander rub his temples through the window of his office, you are witnessing that historical debate in real time. The hours drag on. The initial elation curdles completely into suspense. It is a new and exquisite form of torture. The hope of release is a physical thing, a taste in your mouth, a lightness in your limbs. But it is trapped just out of reach, behind a wall of impenetrable jargon. At dusk, the commander finally emerges, looking exhausted. He holds a single sheet of paper. He announces that the decree is highly complex, and that a full list of those to be released will be posted in due course. Tomorrow, next week, next month, he doesn't say. He dismisses you all. You are left to spend the night in a state of suspended animation, trapped between a brutal past and a future that has never felt so close, or so impossibly far away. The commander's promise of a decision in due course hangs over the compound like a permanent fog. The phrase, you quickly learn, is a masterpiece of bureaucratic ambiguity. It is starting to sound less like a time frame and more like a philosophical concept somewhere between eventually and never. For the first few days, nobody can think of anything else. The work in the quarry grinds to a halt. The compound has the cheerful, relaxed vibe of a room full of people waiting for life-changing medical test results. Every time the commander's door opens, every time a new visitor arrives at the gate, a jolt of anxious electricity runs through the prisoners, but days turn into weeks and no list appears. The initial high-strung tension is impossible to maintain. It slowly curdles into a low-grade, chronic anxiety that infects everyone. Why the delay? Rumors multiply like flies. The commander is waiting for a bribe. The commander sent a query back to the capital for clarification. The ship carrying the clarification sank in a storm. The new king changed his mind. Each theory is debated endlessly, whispered in the barracks at night. This prolonged uncertainty is a far more insidious torture than the simple, brutal reality of the quarry. The old life was hopeless, but it was stable. This new life is a constant oscillation between hope and despair. The hope is a sickness, a fever that makes people irritable and paranoid. Friendships fray. Fights break out over a stolen piece of fish or a perceived insult. The fragile camaraderie of your group is strained to the breaking point. Lord Kim becomes obsessed, endlessly dissecting the legal phrasing of the decree from memory, finding new reasons for optimism one day and pessimism the next. Bei, convinced he is excluded, becomes sullen and silent, retreating behind a wall of angry resignation. You are all trapped by the pace of the pre-modern world. A ship carrying a message from Jeju to the capital, and another carrying the reply, would be at the mercy of winds and tides. The journey could take a month or even longer if the weather was bad. Historians still argue about this information float in the Joseon system. Was it a simple flaw, or a deliberate tool of governance keeping the provinces in a state of dependent uncertainty? To you, it is just agonizing. With no end to the wait in sight, the commander eventually loses his patience and orders everyone back to work. The return to the quarry is surreal. You are back to the same backbreaking labor, but now it feels temporary, conditional. Every swing of the pickaxe is accompanied by the question, is this the last stone I will ever cut? As the weeks stretch into a second month, superstition takes hold of the compound. Prisoners become desperate for any sign, any omen. A self-proclaimed fortune teller starts reading palms. Others practice a crude form of divination, reading the cracks in fire-heated shells. Yesterday, a seagull stole Bei's barley ball right out of his hand. The camp prophet interpreted this as a clear sign that Bei's freedom would be snatched away at the last minute by a winged messenger. The prophecy was not well received. The seasons turn. The bleak Jeju winter finally relinquishes its grip, and the first hints of a reluctant spring appear. The long wait has become the new routine. You have almost become numb to it. And then, one afternoon, as you are loading a cart, a shout goes up. A runner is sprinting up the path from the harbor. He is waving a scroll case over his head. The clarification from Hanyang has arrived. A hush falls over the quarry. Every prisoner and every guard freezes, turning to watch the messenger. This is it. The wait is finally, mercifully, terrifyingly over. The runner hands the scroll to the commander, who breaks the wax seal with his thumb. The quarry is so quiet you can hear the rasp of the paper as he unrolls it. He doesn't grandstand. He doesn't draw out the suspense. He simply begins to read, his voice flat and businesslike against the ever-present wind. First, he reads the names of those whose petitions for clemency were denied and who are to serve out their original sentences. The list is long. He reads the name Bei. You look over at the big man. There is a flicker of something in his eyes. Not surprise, just the dull confirmation of what he already knew. He looks down at his hands, then clenches them into fists. That is all. Then the commander clears his throat and moves to the second list. The following individuals are hereby pardoned by royal decree and are to be given passage back to the mainland on the next available vessel. He reads the name Kim. Lord Kim, who has been standing ramrod straight, sags slightly. A decade of tension releasing from his shoulders in a single, silent exhalation. The commander reads the name Isul. She lets out a small, quiet gasp and covers her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. There is a pause. The commander squints at the next name on the list, his brow furrowed as he tries to decipher the elegant calligraphy. And then he reads your name. It doesn't register at first. You think it must be a mistake, that there is another disgraced scholar with your exact name who also had a famously bad day with an ink blot. But then Lord Kim puts a hand on your shoulder, his grip surprisingly firm. "We are going home," he whispers, his voice thick with emotion. The feeling is not the explosion of joy you might have imagined. It is a profound, dizzying sense of dislocation. Freedom. The word feels too big, too abstract. You have spent years defining yourself by the walls of your prison. Now that they are gone, you feel unmoored, terrified. Freedom, you're discovering, feels a lot like standing on the deck of a ship with no idea which way to steer. The departure is brutally swift. There are no belongings to pack. The freed prisoners are separated from the condemned. The hardest part is the goodbye. You face Bay, the man who taught you how to survive. There are no words for what has passed between you. He simply looks at you, then at Lord Kim, and gives a short, sharp nod. He claps you on the shoulder, a gesture of rough, final affection. Then he turns and walks back toward the quarry without looking back. You walk to the port as a different man. There is no rope, no kang, no paper hat. The feeling of lightness is so intense you feel you might float away. You board the same government ship that brought the news, but this time you are a passenger, not cargo. You are shown to a small cabin below deck. The simple act of being out of the wind feels like an unimaginable luxury. As the ship pulls away, you stand on the deck and watch Jeju recede. The black volcanic shores, the brooding peak of Mount Halasan, the place of your long torment, shrinks into the distance. It is no longer a prison but a scar on your memory. The journey back is a waking dream. You are given clean clothes and proper food, hot soup and white rice. Lord Kim, after devouring his bowl, instinctively wraps a remaining rice cake in a cloth and slips it into his sleeve, a habit forged from years of uncertainty. He catches you watching him, looks at the hidden food, and a sad, ironic smile touches his lips. The marks of exile are not easily erased. Historians note that for many pardoned exiles, the return was not a storybook ending. They came back to impoverished families, lost status, and a world that had moved on without them. The pardon was freedom from prison, not from the past. You are a ghost, sailing back to a life that may no longer have a place for you. As the distant, hazy line of the mainland appears on the horizon, you feel a surge not of joy, but of a deep, profound apprehension. The physical journey is almost over. The real one is just about to begin. The ship docks. The moment you step onto the mainland, you are assaulted by the sheer, overwhelming reality of it. After years on an island where the loudest sound was the wind, the noise of a bustling port city is a physical blow. The shouting of merchants, the hammering of shipwrights, the sheer density of human voices. It's a full-scale military invasion of the senses. You, Lord Kim and Isol, now dressed in simple, clean traveler's clothes provided by the state, move awkwardly through the crowds, your bodies still braced for the hardships of a world that no longer exists. The final journey to Hanyang is a strange inversion of your first one. You travel on foot, but by choice. You sleep in inns, but the softness of a real mattress feels alien. You eat at taverns, but the variety of flavors is bewildering. You are free, yet you still walk and act like prisoners, huddled together, speaking in low voices, suspicious of strangers. You try to remember the proper way to bow to a passing official. Your muscle memory is tuned for lifting rocks and anticipating a guard's kick, not for the delicate ballet of social graces. Finally, you stand before Sung Yemun, the great south gate of the capital. You pass through it in chains, wearing a badge of shame. Now you walk through it as a free, anonymous man. The city is just as you remember, but also completely different. It seems brighter, faster, more crowded. New buildings stand where old ones once were. The fashions of the wealthy are more ostentatious. The world, you realize with a jolt, did not pause while you were gone. It simply went on without you. At a crossroads, your small band of survivors finally breaks apart. Isolde, with a tearful, grateful bow, heads toward the district where her family might still live. Lord Kim, his face a mixture of hope and trepidation, goes to seek out the remnants of his political faction, to see if his name can be restored. And then you are alone, a stranger in the city of your birth. You wander through the streets, a ghost in your own past. You pass the very spot where you were paraded, the place where your father disowned you. No one gives you a second glance. The years of labor and the island sun have weathered your face and thickened your body. You are no longer a scholar. You are just another rough-looking man from the provinces, and Hanyang is full of them. You find your way to your old neighborhood. Standing across the street, you look at the gate to your family home. It is the same, yet a stranger's house. You linger for an hour, a shadow watching a life that is no longer yours. You eventually learn from the idle gossip of a shopkeeper that your father passed away peacefully 2 winters ago. Your mother, she says, now lives with your elder brother and his family in another part of the city. The news lands without the sharp pain you might have expected. It is just a quiet, hollow confirmation of a reality you have long suspected. That door is closed to you forever. As you turn to leave, you see a group of young men, their faces bright with ambition, their robes immaculate, walking towards the Royal Academy. They are laughing, debating some fine point of philosophy. They are you 10 years ago. You look at their impossibly young and hopeful faces, and you want to call out a warning. Watch out for the flies, you want to say. They have a real flair for dramatic irony. But you say nothing. What could you possibly tell them that they would ever understand? Historians still argue about the true psychological impact of exile. Was it the hardship, or the dislocation that followed? Standing on a bridge as dusk settles over the capital, you know the answer. The punishment was not the hat, or the quarry, or the years you lost. The punishment is this: to be returned to your world, and to find that you no longer have a place in it. You are free, and you are utterly, completely alone. And so your journey ends, not with a great revelation or a triumphant return, but in the quiet, fading light of a city that no longer knows your name. The years of suffering have been endured. The sentence has been served, and all that is left is the vast, uncertain quiet of a future yet to be written. But that is a story for another time. For now, the story is over. The struggle is done. You can let the tension ease from your shoulders, feeling the weight of the cangue, the chafe of the rope, and the stares of the crowd all simply drift away now, fading like a half-remembered dream. Let the sounds of the city, the bustling markets and the echoing shouts soften now into a gentle, distant hum, like the soft whisper of the wind over the shores of that lonely island. The sharp edges of the story can blur now. The faces of the guards and the prisoners can become indistinct, as the whole long, arduous journey dissolves into the peaceful darkness behind your eyes. Your own journey for tonight is almost at its end as well, a much gentler journey into rest. Just ease into that feeling of release, the quiet satisfaction of a long story told, a hard road walked to its final, peaceful conclusion. There is nothing left to do now but drift, nothing left to carry but the light, easy weight of your own breathing as you quietly, gently fall asleep.